Japanese names in modern times usually consist of a family name, followed by a given name. Middle names are not generally used. Japanese names are usually written in kanji, which are characters usually Chinese in origin but Japanese in pronunciation. The kanji for a name may have a variety of possible Japanese pronunciations, but parents might use hiragana or katakana when giving a birth name to their newborn child. Names written in hiragana or katakana are phonetic renderings, and so lack the visual meaning of names expressed in the logographic kanji. Japanese family names are extremely varied. According to estimates, there are over 100,000 different surnames in use today in Japan. The three most common family names in Japan are Satō, Suzuki and Takahashi. This diversity is in stark contrast to the situation in other nations of the East Asian cultural sphere, there being very few Chinese surnames, and similarly Korean names and Vietnamese names. This difference reflects a different history. While Chinese surnames have been in use for millennia and were often reflective of an entire clan or adopted from nobles and were thence transferred to Korea and Vietnam via noble names, modern Japanese family names date only to the 19th century, following the Meiji Restoration, and were chosen at will. The recent introduction of surnames has two additional effects. Japanese names became widespread when the country had a very large population instead of dating to ancient times, and since little time has passed, Japanese names have not experienced a significant surname extinction as has occurred in a much longer history in China. Surnames occur with varying frequency in different regions. For example, the names Chinan, Higa, and Shimabukuro are common in Okinawa but not in other parts of Japan. This is mainly due to differences between the language and culture of Yamato people and Okinawans. Many Japanese family names derive from features of the rural landscape. For example, Ishikawa means stone river, Yamamoto means the base of the mountain, and Inu means above the well. While family names follow relatively consistent rules, given names are much more diverse in pronunciation and character usage. While many common names can easily be spelled or pronounced, many parents choose names with unusual characters or pronunciations, and such names cannot in general be spelled or pronounced unless both the spelling and pronunciation are given. Unusual pronunciations have especially become common, with this trend having increased significantly since the 1990s. For example, the popular boy's name AC is traditionally pronounced Hiroto, but in recent years alternative pronunciations Haruto, Yamato, Taiga, Sora, Torito, Dorito, and Masato have all entered use. Male names often end in ra or ta, or contain iki, kazu, ji, or dai, while female names often end in ko or mi. Other popular endings for female names include ka and na. Structure: the majority of Japanese people have one surname and one given name with no middle name, except for the Japanese imperial family, whose members bear no surname. The family name, Meiji, Uj or Seri, precedes the given name, called the name or lower name. The given name may be referred to as the lower name, because, in vertically written Japanese, the given name appears under the family name. People with mixed Japanese and foreign parentage may have middle names. Historically, Meiji, Uj and Seri had different meanings. Seri was originally the matrilineal surname. Later it became granted only by the emperor. There were relatively few Seri, and most of the medieval noble clans traced their lineage either directly to these Seri or to the courtiers of these Seri. Uj was first used to designate patrilineal descent, but later merged with Meiji around the same time Seri lost its matrilineal significance. Meiji was, simply, what a family chooses to call itself, as opposed to the Seri granted by the emperor. While it was passed on patrilineally, one had a certain degree of freedom in changing one's Meiji. See also Kabane. Multiple Japanese characters have the same pronunciations, so several Japanese names have multiple meanings. A particular kanji itself can have multiple meanings and pronunciations. In some names, Japanese characters phonetically spell a name and have no intended meaning behind them. Many Japanese personal names use puns. Very few names can serve either as surnames or as given names. Therefore, to those familiar with Japanese names, which name is the surname and which is the given name is usually apparent, no matter which order the names are presented in. This thus makes it unlikely that the two names will be confused, for example when writing in English while using the family name given name naming order. However, due to the variety of pronunciations and differences in languages, some common surnames and given names may coincide when romanized, for example, Shoji and Shoji. Japanese names have distinct differences from Chinese names through the selection of characters in a name and pronunciation. A Japanese person can distinguish a Japanese name from a Chinese name by looking at it. Eiki Tomizawa, author of Japan's Hidden Bilinguals, The Languages of War Orphans and Their Families After Repatriation from China, said that this was equivalent to how Europeans can easily tell that the name Smith is English and Schmidt is German or Victor is English or French and Vittorio is Italian. Characters: Japanese names are usually written in kanji, although some names use hiragana or even katakana, or a mixture of kanji and kana. While most traditional names use kuronoyomi kanji readings, a large number of given names and surnames use onyomi kanji readings as well. Many others use readings which are only used in names, such as the female name Nozomi. The majority of surnames comprise 1, 2 or 3 kanji characters. There are also a small number of 4 or 5 kanji surnames, such as Tashigawara and Kitoroji, Kadanokaji, but these are extremely rare. The sound no, indicating possession, and corresponding to the character a registered trademark, is often included in names but not written as a separate character, as in the common name Aish top above, top of the well, or historical figures such as Sen no Rikaya. Most personal names use 1, 2, or 3 kanji. Male given names often use the characters hiro, ki, and ta. 4-syllable given names are common, especially in eldest sons. As mentioned above, female given names often end in the syllable ko, written with the kanji meaning child, or mi, written with the kanji meaning beautiful. The usage of ko has changed significantly over the years. Prior to the Meiji Restoration, it was reserved for members of the imperial family. Following the Restoration, it became popular and was overwhelmingly common in the Taisha and early Showa era. The suffix ko increased in popularity after the mid-20th century. Around the year 2006, due to the citizenry mimicking naming habits of popular entertainers, the suffix ko was declining in popularity. At the same time, names of Western origin, written in kana, were becoming increasingly popular for naming of girls. By 2004 there was a trend of using hiragana instead of kanji in naming girls. Molly Hakes, author of the Everything Conversational Japanese book, Basic Instruction for Speaking This Fascinating Language in Any Setting, said that this may have to do with using hiragana out of cultural pride, since hiragana is Japan's indigenous writing form, or out of not assigning a meaning to a girl's name so that others do not have a particular expectation of her. Names ending with ko dropped significantly in popularity in the mid-1980s, but are still given, though much less than in the past. Male names occasionally end with the syllable ko, but very rarely using the kanji a. Common male name endings are shi and do. Names ending with shi are often adjectives, for example, Atsushi, which might mean, for example, to be, faithful. In the past, names written with katakana were common for women, but this trend seems to have lost favor. Hiragana names for women are not unusual. Kana names for boys, particularly those written in hiragana, have historically been very rare. This may be in part because the hiragana script is seen as feminine. In medieval Japan, women generally were not taught kanji and wrote exclusively in hiragana. Names cannot begin with the syllable n. This is in common with other proper Japanese words, though colloquial words may begin with a, as in aa 3/4 a. Some names end in n, the male names Ken, Shin, and Jun are examples. The syllable n should not be confused with the consonant n, which names can begin with. For example, the female name Noko or the male Noa. One large category of family names can be categorized as ta names. The kanji e, currency, meaning wisteria, has the onyomi ta. Many Japanese people have surnames that include this kanji as the second character. This is because the Fujiwara clan gave their samurai surnames ending with the first character of their name, to denote their status in an era when commoners were not allowed surnames. Examples include Ata, Anda, Ita, Ada, Eta, Enda, Gota, Jita, Keita, Kita, Kuda, Konda, Sata, Sata, Shinda, Suda, Noita, Beta, and Muta. As already noted, some of the most common family names are in this list. Japanese family names usually include characters referring to places and geographic features. Difficulty of reading names: a name written in kanji may have more than one common pronunciation, only one of which is correct for a given individual. For example, the surname written in kanji as e plus or minus e micron e, may be read either Takahashi or Shoji. Conversely, any one name may have several possible written forms, and again, only one will be correct for a given individual. The character euro, when used as a male given name, may be used as the written form for Haim, Hitoshi, Iki/Ikikazu/Kazu, and many others. The name Haim may be written with any of the following: a section, b squared, a euro, a florin, e, a per mil micron, c, I, a per mil, a, eo, e plus or minus, a, ay, or cn. This many-to-many correspondence between names and the ways they are written is much more common with male given names than with surnames or female given names, but can be observed in all these categories. This can make the collation, pronunciation, and romanization of a Japanese name a very difficult problem. For this reason, business cards often include the pronunciation of the name as hiragana, and forms and documents often include spaces to write the reading of the name in kana. A few Japanese names, particularly family names, include archaic versions of characters. For example, the very common character shima, island, may be written as a paragraph or a paragraph A instead of the usual a cubed paragraph. Some names also feature very uncommon kanji, or even kanji which no longer exist in modern Japanese. Japanese people who have such names are likely to compromise by substituting similar or simplified characters. An example of such a name is Satyr. There are two common kanji for sai here. The two sai characters have different meanings. E per mil means together, or parallel, but e means to purify. These names can also exist written in archaic forms, as E1/2 shi, currency, and E1/2 e, currency respectively. Family names are sometimes written with idiosyncratic characters, called eiji, that relate indirectly to the name as spoken. For example, Ilioa Uroi, yen would normally be read as Shigetsu Tsutachi, but as a family name it is read Watanuki, because April 1st is the traditional day to switch from winter to summer clothes. In the same way a degree E-cubed Iotish would normally be read as Kotori Asobi or Shakaya, but is read Takanashi, because little birds play where there are no hawks. Most Japanese people and agencies have adopted customs to deal with these issues. Address books, for instance, often contain furigana or ruby characters to clarify the pronunciation of the name. Japanese nationals are also required to give a romanized name for their passport. The recent use of Japanese media using katakana when referring to Japanese celebrities who have gained international fame has started a fad among young socialites who attempt to invoke a cosmopolitan flair using katakana names as a badge of honor. All of these complications are also found in Japanese place names. Not all names are complicated. Some common names are summarized by the phrase Tanakamura, the three kanji, C degree, A and E, together in any pair, form a simple, reasonably common surname, Tanaka, Nakamura, Murata, Nakata, Muranaka, Tamura. Despite these difficulties, there are enough patterns and recurring names that most native Japanese will be able to read virtually all family names they encounter and the majority of personal names. Regulations: kanji names in Japan are governed by the Japanese Ministry of Justice's rules on kanji use in names. As of October 2004 there are 2,232 name kanji, and commonly used characters used in personal names, and the Japanese government plans to increase this list by 578 kanji in the near future. This would be the largest increase since World War II. only kanji which appear on the official list may be used in given names. This is intended to ensure that names can be readily written and read by those literate in Japanese. Rules also govern names considered to be inappropriate. For example, in 1993 two parents who tried to name their child Akuma were prohibited from doing so after a massive public outcry. Though there are regulations on the naming of children, many archaic characters can still be found in adults' names, particularly those born prior to the Second World War. Because the legal restrictions on use of such kanji cause inconvenience for those with such names and promote a proliferation of identical names, many recent changes have been made to increase rather than to reduce the number of kanji allowed for use in names. The Sapporo High Court held that it was unlawful for the government to deny registration of a child's name because it contained a kanji character that was relatively common but not included in the official list of name characters compiled by the Ministry of Justice. Subsequently, the Japanese government promulgated plans to increase the number of permitted kanji. The use of a space in given names is not allowed, because technically, a space is not an allowed character. The plan to increase the number of name kanji has been controversial, largely because Chinese characters meaning cancer, hemorrhoids, corpse, and excrement, as well as those used in jukyo meaning curse, prostitute, and fornication, are among the proposed additions to the list. This is because no measures were taken to determine the appropriateness of the kanji proposed. An example is hip, or buttock, which sounds odd to most Japanese people, but its prohibition may be controversial because it is not uncommon in family names. The government will seek input from the public before approving the list. Customs. In ancient times, people in Japan were considered the property of the emperor and their surname reflected the role in the government they served. An example is Oetomo. Names would also be given in the recognition of a great achievement and contribution. Until the Meiji Restoration, Japanese common people had no surnames, and when necessary, used a substitute such as the name of their birthplace. For example, Ikira born in Asaimura in the province of Musashi would say Ikira from Asaimura of Musashi. Merchants were named after their stores or brands, and farmers were named after their fathers. After the Meiji Restoration, the government ordered all commoners to assume surnames in addition to their given names, as part of modernization and westernization. This was specified in the Family Register Law of 1898. Many people adopted historical names, others simply made names up, chose names through divination, or had a Shinto or Buddhist priest choose a surname for them. This explains, in part, the large number of surnames in Japan, as well as their great diversity of spelling and pronunciation, and makes tracing ancestry past a certain point extremely difficult in Japan. During the period when typical parents had several children, it was a common practice to name sons by numbers suffixed with ra. The first son would be known as Ikira, the second as Jira, and so on. Girls were often named with ko at the end of the given name. This should not be confused with the less common male suffix hiko. Both practices have become less common, although many children still have names along these lines. While some people now may believe this, Lafcadio Heian, in Shadowings, makes it clear that at least in his time, the ending ko was not any part of the name, but an honorific suffix like aa-san. Particularly, even though the symbol was child, it meant lady, was used only to upper-class females, and would have been ridiculous applied to middle-class or lower-class women. Pretty much the same names were used by all classes, but Hanako was upper-class, while lesser women would be O-hana-san, with honorific prefix as well as suffix. Speaking to and of others. The way in which a name is used in conversation depends on the circumstances and the speaker's relationships with the listener and the bearer of the name. Typically the family name is used, with given names largely restricted to informal situations and cases where the speaker is older than, superior to, or very familiar with the named individual. When addressing someone, or referring to a member of one's outgroup, a title such as aa-san is typically added. Japanese people often avoid referring to their seniors or superiors by name at all, using just a title. Within a family this might be a kinship relations such as a shiei-oka-san, in a school it could be a cy-sensei, while a company president would be addressed as Satyr. On the other hand, pronominals meaning you are used rather little in Japanese. Using such words sometimes sounds disrespectful, and people will commonly address each other by name, title and honorific even in face-to-face conversations. Calling someone's name without any title or honorific is called yobasute, and may be considered rude even in the most informal and friendly occasions. This faux pas, however, is readily excused for foreigners. Nicknames, corresponding to any given name. There are one or more hypercharistics, affectionate nicknames. These are formed by adding the suffix chan or florina to a stem. There are two types of stem. One consists of the full given name. Examples of this type are Tara-chan from Tara, Kaimiko-chan from Kaimiko, and Yasunari-chan from Yasunari. The other type of stem is a modified stem derived from the full given name. Examples of such names are Taro-chan from Tara, Kii-chan from Kaimiko, and Ya-chan from Yasunari. Hypercharistics with modified stems are more intimate than those based on the full given name. Hypercharistics with modified stems are derived by adding chan to a stem consisting of an integral number, usually 1 but occasionally 2, a feet, where a foot consists of 2 moras. A mora I cubed c euro is the unit of which a light syllable contains 1 and a heavy syllable 2. For example, the stems that may be derived from tara are, consisting of 2 light syllables, and, consisting of a single syllable with a long vowel, resulting in taro-chan and tar-chan. The stems that may be derived from hanako are, with 2 light syllables, with 1 syllable closed by a consonant, and, with 1 syllable with a long vowel, resulting in hanakan, hainchan, and ha-chan. The segmental content is usually a left substring of that of the given name. However, in some cases it is obtained by other means, including the use of another reading of the kanji used to write the name. For example, a girl named Megumi may be called Kikan or just Kei, because the character used to write the Megumi, the micron, can also be read Kei. The common Japanese practice of forming abbreviations by concatenating the first 2 morae of 2 words is sometimes applied to names. For example, Takuya Kimura, a famous Japanese actor and singer, becomes Kimitaku. This is sometimes applied even to non-Japanese celebrities. Brad Pitt, whose full name in Japanese is Barado Pitto, is commonly known as Burapi, and Jimi Hendrix is abbreviated as Jimin. Some Japanese celebrities have also taken names combining kanji and katakana, such as Teriyuta. Another slightly less common method is doubling 1 or 2 syllables of the person's name, such as the use of Mamimami for Mamago Noto. Names from other ethnic groups in Japan. Many ethnic minorities, mostly Korean and Chinese, living in Japan adopt Japanese names. The roots of this custom go back to the colonial-era policy of Zashikeimu, which permitted many Koreans to change their names to Japanese names. Nowadays, ethnic minorities, mostly Korean, who immigrated to Japan after the WWII, take on Japanese names, sometimes called pass names, to ease communication and, more importantly, to avoid discrimination. A few of them still keep their native names. Japanese citizenship used to require adoption of a Japanese name. In recent decades, the government has allowed individuals to simply adopt katakana versions of their native names when applying for citizenship. National Diet member Tsurunen Marite, originally Marty Tsurunen, who is Finnish, is a famous example. Others transliterate their names into phonetically similar kanji compounds, such as activist Aruda Debito, an American previously known as David Oldwinkle. Still others have abandoned their native names entirely in favor of traditional Japanese names, such as Lafcadio Heian, who used the name Kwazumi Yakumo. At the time, to gain Japanese citizenship, it was necessary to be adopted by a Japanese family and take their name. Ethnic Chinese and Koreans in Japan who choose to renounce permanent resident status to apply for Japanese citizenship sometimes have to change the characters in their names to apply for citizenship, because of the restrictions on which kanji can be used. Individuals born overseas with Western given names and Japanese surnames are usually given a katakana name in Western order when referred to in Japanese. Eric Shinzaki, for instance, is referred to as a W florin 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 AAA florin cubed AA. However, sometimes Japanese parents decide to use Japanese order when mentioning the child's name in Japanese. Also, Japanese parents tend to give their children a name in kanji, hiragana or katakana, particularly if it is a Japanese name. Even individuals born in Japan, with a Japanese name, might be referred to using katakana, if they've established residency or a career overseas. Yoko Ono, for example, was born in Japan, with the name Adegriya, and spent the first 20 years of her life there. However, having lived outside the country for more than 50 years, and basing her career in the United States, Ono is often referred to in the press as a florin W florin 1/4 A cubed, preserving the Japanese order of her name, but rendering it in katakana. There is a restriction on the use of the V character in a name unless at least one of the parents is of foreign origin. The closest corresponding katakana is a florin, which can be romanized as V or B. This affects issuing of Japanese passports or other documentation where a Romaji representation of the name is given. The letter V is replaced with B. This affects names such as Kevin, which would be written as Kebin. Imperial names. The Japanese emperor and his families have no surname for historical reasons, only a given name such as Hirohito, which is rarely used in Japan. Japanese prefer to say the emperor, or the crown prince, out of respect and as a measure of politeness. When children are born into the imperial family, they receive a standard given name, as well as a special title. For instance, the current emperor was born Shugonomiya Akihito, his title being Shugonomiya, and was referred to as Prince Shugu during his childhood. This title is generally used until the individual becomes heir to the throne or inherits one of the historical princely family names. When a member of the imperial family becomes a noble or a commoner, the emperor gives him or her a family name. In medieval era, a family name Minamoto was often used. In modern era, princely family names are used. For example, many members of the extended imperial family became commoners after World War II, and adopted their princely family names, minus the honorific nomiya, as regular surnames. Conversely, at the time that a noble or a commoner become a member of the imperial family, such as through marriage, his or her family name is lost. An example is Empress Michiko, whose name was Michiko Shada before she married Prince Akihito. Historical names. The current structure did not materialize until the 1870s when the government made the new family registration system. In feudal Japan, names reflected a person's social status. They also reflect a person's affiliation to Buddhist, Shinto, feudatory military, Confucian scholarly, mercantile, peasant, slave and imperial orders. Before feudal times, Japanese clan names figured prominently in history. Names with no fall into this category. No means of and is similar in usage to the aristocratic von in German, although the association is in the opposite order in Japanese, and is not generally explicitly written in this style of name. Thus, Minamoto no Yoritomo was Yoritomo of the Minamoto clan. Fujiwara no Kamatari, Ki no Tshuro Yuki, and Taira no Komori are additional examples. These family names were recorded in Shinsen Shijuroku. Miyakyu and ruling class use names composed of kanji, usually of one or two syllables and read in their dialects, like Korean and Chinese names. Before the government formalized the naming system in 1868, Japanese personal names were fluid. Men changed their names for a variety of reasons, to signify that they had attained a higher social status, to demonstrate their allegiance to a house or clan, to show that they had succeeded to the headship of a family or company, to shed bad luck that was attached to an inauspicious name, or simply to avoid being mistaken for a neighbor with a similar name. Upper-class men often changed their names upon coming of age, leaving behind their childhood name and taking on an adult name. When nobles and samurai received promotions in rank, they received new names, which might contain a syllable or character from their lord's name as a mark of favor. Women's personal name changes were recorded less often, so they may not have changed their names as frequently as men did, but women who went into service as maids or entertainers frequently changed their names for the duration of their service. During their employment, their temporary names were treated as their legal names. For example, a maid who was involved in legal dealings in Kyoto in 1819 to 1831 signed legal documents as Seo during one period of employment and as Mitsu during a later period of employment, but she signed as Iwa, presumably her birth name, when she was between jobs. A Japanese person could go by one of several names, depending on the occasion. For example, the famous 18th-century author, poet, and artist Iway Samura wrote under the name Santokai Arden and worked as an illustrator under the name Kataime Snobu. Artists and authors adopted a new name for each medium or form they worked in, whether or not they worked professionally. Some types of artistic names were referred to by special terminology, for example, haiga or heimu for a haiku poet, and kaga for a waka poet. Scholars also gave themselves a scholarly name, which was often the Chinese reading of the characters of their Japanese name. People who entered a religious order adopted a religious name. Death added to the number of a person's names. When a person died, their personal name was referred to as an imina and was no longer used. Instead, the person was referred to by their posthumous name. The personal names of Japanese emperors were also referred to as imina, even if the emperor was alive. Prior to Emperor Jimmu, the imina of the emperors were very long and not used. The number of characters in each name diminished after Jimmu's reign. Azana, which is given at Genpuku, is used by others and one himself uses his real name to refer to him. Ga are commonly named after places or houses. For example, Basho, as in the haiku poet Matsuo Basho, is named after his house, Bashan. In the late shogunate period, many anti-government activists used several false names to hide their activities from the shogunate. Examples are Saidani Amitera for Sakamoto Ryama, Nyabari Matsusuke for Kyodo Tokoshi and Tani Umanosuke for Takesoji Shinzaku. The famous writer Kyokute Bakin is known to have had as many as 33 names. Professional names, actors and actresses in Western and Japanese dramatic forms, comedians, sumo wrestlers, Western-style professional wrestlers, and practitioners of traditional crafts often use professional names. Many stage names of television and film actors and actresses are unremarkable, being just like ordinary Japanese personal names, but a few are tongue-in-cheek. For example, Kamitari Fujiwara chose the name of the aforementioned founder of the Fujiwara family, while Haino Yajin's name sounds like Be Careful with Fire. Many stand-up comics like the duo Beat Takeshi and Beat Kiyoshi choose a Western name for the act, and use their own given names. Writers also tend to be clever about their names, for example Edogawa Ranpo, which is designed to sound like Edgar Allan Poe. Sumo wrestlers take wrestling names called shikana. While a shikana can be the wrestler's own surname, most upper division rikishi have a shikana different from their surname. A typical shikana consists of 2 or 3 kanji, rarely just 1 or more than 3. Often, part of the name comes from the wrestler's master, a place name, the name of a weapon, an item identified with Japanese tradition, or a term indicating superiority. Often, waka indicates a wrestler whose father was also in sumo. In this case, the meaning is junior. Wrestlers can change their shikana, as Taka Inada did when he became Takanohana and then Takanohana. Another notable example is the wrestler Centauru, which means fighting war dragon but is also homophonous with St. Louis, his city of origin. Geisha and practitioners of traditional crafts and arts such as pottery, the tea ceremony, calligraphy, Izumi and ikebana often take professional names. In many cases, these come from the master under whom they studied. Kabuki actors take one of the traditional surnames such as Nakamura, Banda or Ono. Some names are inherited on succession, such as that of the famous Kabuki actor Banda Tomasaburo 5 through a naming ceremony. Japanese names in English and Western languages. As of 2008, when using English and other Western languages, Japanese people usually give their names in an order reversed from the traditional Japanese naming order, with the family name after the given name, instead of the given name after the family name. beginning in Meiji-era Japan. In many English-language publications the naming order of modern-day Japanese people is reversed into the family name last order. Japanese people adopted using Western naming order in European languages as a part of the Meiji-era adoption of aspects of Western culture, as part of proving to the wider world that Japan was a developed country rather than an undeveloped country. When Japanese people attended events for the international community, such as balls, Japanese people use the Western naming order. Japanese often have nicknames that are shortened forms of their actual names, and they use these names with foreigners. For instance, Kazuyuki may call himself Kaz. Some Japanese living abroad adopt nicknames that they use with friends who are non-Japanese. These names are not considered middle names. Most foreign publications reverse the names of modern individuals, and most Japanese reverse their own names when creating materials for foreign consumption. A Japanese executive or official usually has two business cards, one in Japanese and intended for fellow Japanese, using Japanese order, and another intended for foreigners, with the name in Western order. In popular journalism publications, Western order is used. In English many historical figures are still referred to with the family name first. This is especially the case in scholarly works about Japan. Many scholarly works use Japanese order with Japanese names in general, and a scholarly work is more likely to use Japanese order if the author is a Japanologist. John Power, author of Japanese Names, wrote people who can speak and read Japanese have a strong resistance to switching Japanese names to the Western order. Books written by these authors often have notes stating that Japanese names are in the original order. Some books use Western order for modern Japanese people and Japanese order for pre-Meiji era figures. Some books do not have consistent naming order practices. Shizuka Saki of Look Japan said, "This is not only a headache for writers and translators, it is also a source of confusion for readers." Lynn E. Riggs of the Society of Writers, Editors and Translators, a professional writing organization headquartered in Tokyo, said, "When you publish a book about Japan, you are publishing it for people who want to know about Japan. So they are interested in learning something new or something as it is supposed to be." Edith Terry, author of How Asia Got Rich, said that because Japanese people are mastering a Western game, people have some pride and at the same time feel insecurity because the game is on Western terms rather than Japanese terms. The standard presentation of Japanese names in English differs from the standard presentations of modern Chinese names, since modern Chinese names are usually not reversed to fit the Western order in English, except when the Chinese person is living or traveling outside of China. The convention regarding Japanese names also differs from Korean names, which are usually in Korean order unless the Korean person is abroad. Powell wrote that the difference between the treatment of Japanese names and of Chinese and Korean names often results in confusion. Terry wrote, "It was one of the ironies of the late 20th century that Japan remained stranded in the formal devices underlining its historical quest for equality with the West, while China set its own terms, in languages in big power politics." Saki said in 2001 that most Japanese people writing in English use Western order, but that some figures began to promote the use of Japanese order as Japan became a major economic power in the 20th century. The Japan Style Sheet, a 1998 guide for producing English-language works about Japan written by SWET, advocates the use of the Japanese naming order as often as possible because the translators wanted to promote a consistency in naming order. In 1987, one publisher of English-language textbooks in Japan used Japanese order, while in 2001 6 of the 8 publishers of English-language textbooks in Japan used Japanese order. In December 2000 the Council on the National Language of the Ministry of Education recommended that English-language productions begin using the Japanese naming order because it is in general desirable that personal names be presented and written in a way that preserves their unique forms, except for registries and other documents with specific standards. It recommended using capitalization or commas to clarify which part of the personal name is the family name and which part is the given name. In a January 2000 opinion poll from the Agency for Cultural Affairs on the preferred order of Japanese names in the English language, 34.9% had a preference for Japanese order, 30.6% had a preference for Western order, and 29.6% had no preference. In 1986, the Japan Foundation decided that it would use the Japanese naming order in all of its publications. A Japan Foundation Publishing Division spokesperson stated around 2001 that some SWET publications, including popular Anglophone newspapers, continue to use Western order. As of 2001, the agency's style sheet recommends using a different naming order style depending upon the context. For instance, it advocates using the Western order in publications for readers who are not familiar with Japan, such as international conference papers. Japanese names in Chinese languages. In Chinese-speaking communities, Japanese names are pronounced according to the Chinese pronunciation of the characters. For example, in Mandarin, a plus or minus c degree ae florin becomes shaoan tian ta ila ng, while e cubed y plus or minus c euro becomes jia shaoan ya cubed ya fa. As a result, a Japanese person without adequate knowledge of Chinese would not understand his or her name when it is spoken in Chinese. Sometimes, a Japanese name includes kokuji. These kanji resemble Chinese characters but originate in Japan and do not have Chinese pronunciations. For example, the word Kim-yu has no Chinese reading. When words like this are encountered, usually the rule of EO per mil esh registered trademark euro eshi 1/4 or E squared esh registered trademark euro applies. Therefore E 3/4 1/4 is read as ra to the first, which is derived from a yen. However, the phrasing of the rule is incorrect. A yen is not the radical of E 3/4 1/4. The radical is actually E 3/4 paragraph, which should be chuo. Henji, the author of Improving Information Extraction and Translation Using Component Interactions, wrote that because Japanese names have flexible lengths, it may be difficult for someone to identify a Japanese name when reading a Chinese text. See also: Amami name, art name, Japanese alias, list of most common Japanese family names, Meiji, Okinawan family name, Ja. A 1/2 EA Shao currency, a 1/2 EO per mil AE copyright, a registered trademark EEZH, a 1/4 telephone, a 1/2 CYO a degree EO per mil AE copyright AE. References: Power, John. Japanese names. The Indexer. June 2008. Volume 26, Issue 2, p. C4-2 C4-8. ISSN 00194131. Accession number 502,948,569. Available on EBSCOhost. Terry, Edith. How Asia Got Rich, Japan, China and the Asian Miracle. M.E. Sharp, 2002. ISBN 0-7656-0356-X, 9,780,765,603,562. Some materials taken from Kodansha Encyclopedia of Japan, article on names, notes. Further reading: Hoffman, Michael. What's in a Name? Japan Times. Sunday, October 11, 2009. Which names are to be found where? Japan Times. Sunday, October 11, 2009. Coop, Albert J., Hojitaro Inada. Japanese Names and How to Read Them, 2005. ISBN 0-7103-1102-8. Kagan Paul International Limited. Nishigai Associates, Incorporated, 1990. Nihon Saimu Yomi Furujitan, vols. Seri Nobu and Meri Nobu. Tokyo, Nishigai Associates. O'Neill, P.G. Japanese Names, 1972. ISBN 0-8348-0225-2. Weatherall Incorporated. Plitzchow, Herbert. Japan's Name Culture, 1995. ISBN 1-873410-42-5. Routledge Curtin, Poser, William J. Evidence for Foot Structure in Japanese, Language 66.1.78-105. Throndada Tur, Solveig. Name construction in medieval Japan 2004 ISBN 0-939329-02-6 Pot Boiler Press, Society of Writers, Editors and Translators. Japan Style Sheet 1998 ISBN 1-880656-30-2 Stonebridge Press, External links, Japanese names section of Sailang Japan FAQ, Japanorama, Japanese names, Japanese, a Euro Uri, Zeta A registered trademark AA Permil a Euro C registered trademark E, index page of names of Japanese, Internet Archive, Japanese names in kanji and hiragana. Japanese, a Y1/2 a registered trademark E, A, I1/4 AA, I1/4 Permil I1/4 I1/4 ACE squared E1/4 Permil, publication of 100,000 surnames, names, in the country, Japanese, E unregistered trademark R squared AAAE Florin IR squared CIA, Shiraka Lab of the Department of Humanities in the Shizuoka University Surnames of Japan, Shizuoka Prefecture, Okinawa Prefecture and Germany. Japanese, AA, EEO squared, records of names Japanese names in kanji and hiragana. Japanese, E, A, E, Museum of Surnames, Statistics of Japanese surnames. Japanese given names, Popular Japanese baby names 1994 to 2003. Trends in Japanese baby names, Namiko Abe, 2005, www.JDIC Online Dictionary with over 400,000 Japanese names.